Hello world, Shelly here, and today it's time for your Friday foundation fix, where you can get your fix of foundation reviews in between foundation fests. And today I'm going to check out the new release from NATASHA DENONA. It is the Transformatte Pore Vanishing Foundation. This comes in 35 different shades, retails for $45. You get 0.94 fluid ounces of product. That means if you wanted to compare this to the typical standard 1 fluid ounce, it's about 48 bucks. So it is up there on price range. I'm on Sephora's website right now, and it's getting about 3.5 stars out of 5 with 25 reviews at this point. Let's take a look at some of the claims. This is a medium to full coverage modern matte liquid luxe foundation that blurs pores, smooths texture, and protects your skin from environmental damage and stays all day. The foundation comes in 35 shades, expertly designed, blah, 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 sensitive, normal, dry, combo, and oily. Notice that normal and dry are listed as the types that should work with this matte foundation. So looking at their shade range, one thing that I found interesting is that what they consider warm is not necessarily yellow. They distinguish between warm and yellow. I got this in the shade 24 warm, or 24W. This is described as light. There are quite a few shades lighter than this, and the very pale end of the spectrum looks very pale. So if you have very fair skin, you may find a match in this foundation. On the deep end of the spectrum, honestly, I think there are only 4 shades that look like they are deep. This is very catered toward the light to medium end of the spectrum, and I'd say even more so to the light end of the spectrum, which is good if you're fair, and if you're not, you might not find a match in this. So in terms of my shade here, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 shades lighter than this one, but the way the numbering goes, the shades are, the numeric portion is the lightness to darkness, the letter is the undertone. So they've got R for red, Y for yellow, W for warm, they've got warm yellow, they've got plain yellow, they've got warm red, they've got neutral. So when I was looking at the swatches online, the W looks almost like a pinky peach undertone. I tend to prefer neutral to cool undertones, so I'm not sure that warm is exactly the same as most other companies, because most companies, a yellow undertone would be warm, but they distinguish yellow as a separate undertone. So we'll see how this goes. Let's take a look at this swatched against some others in my collection. Alrighty, let's swatch. First up is today's foundation, the NATASHA DENONA Transformatte in 24W Light. Next I've got the MAC Studio Sculpt in NW15. You can tell that the MAC is more of a cool undertone. I would say that the NATASHA DENONA is maybe a shade darker than the MAC, so maybe it's like an NW20 or so. Third, I've got the Lancome Renergy Lift in shade 250 Bisque Warm, and here you can definitely see that warm means yellow in the Lancome world. Fourth, I've got the Estee Lauder Double Wear Stay in Place in 1C1 Cool Bone. And last up, I've got the Dior Backstage Face and Body in shade 2 Neutral, which I think is just a little darker than the NATASHA DENONA. Starting out with a 43-year-old face, I have some sun damage I like to cover up. I do have deeper smile lines, some forehead lines the foundation likes to settle in. I have pores that give me trouble, especially around my cheeks, and some texture in between my eyebrows. So those are the things I am challenged with when I am applying foundation. I have normal to dry skin. My skin is pretty normal in the summertime, but it dehydrates very easily. So if there are a lot of drying ingredients and they're not balanced out by moisturizing ingredients, then I will tend to have trouble with dehydration in my skin. I've already cleansed, sunscreened, and moisturized my face. Since this is a matte foundation, I figured it best to use a hydrating primer, and what do you know? I also picked up the NATASHA DENONA Face Glow Primer. This is one of those like cushiony primers that reminds me of like egg whites. You have to like scoop it out, and it's got a very nice sort of tacky finish. I like that because I feel like foundation tends to cling and hold in place better with a primer like that. So I've never used this before. This is the first time, but I figure, Natasha Denona, Natasha Denona, Natasha Denona. I have a couple other Natasha things we're going to try out today too, because, yeah, Sephora sale hooked me up. Didn't hook me up, my wallet hooked me up. I'll use a sponge on one side of my face. This is the Eco Tools Total Perfecting Blender that has been eaten by my cats. And on the other side, I will use the e.l.f. Ultimate Blending Brush. We'll see if there is a difference in how this applies one way or the other. I've got a little bit of self-tanner on right now. I am maybe 2 shades darker than my usual. My face, I do not self-tan, so I rely on my foundation to make my face match the rest of my body. We've got a squeezy tube with a pump and a surprisingly runny foundation for a matte finish. Interesting. That's so wild. This dries down to a matte finish even though it blends out like a more creamier foundation. It's really interesting the way that happened. It dried down so quickly, I don't think I did a very good job. Like, I think I missed half my nose, but that's okay. We will even this all out. Let's try the brush side. So interesting. You just kind of smooth it into place and then it like locks down into a super lightweight matte finish. Now, I would call this light coverage. I think the sponge and the brush have just about the same coverage. I don't think one is any more than the other, so I definitely need to go in with a bit of building because they did say this can be medium to full coverage. I'm not going to try for full coverage. I'm going to shoot for medium and we'll see if we can get there. Let's get a little more product. The pumps don't, it's kind of airy, so like that was, I pressed it twice, but I'd say I got maybe a pump and a quarter. This is an odd duck. I feel like the second layer is looking a bit heavy, like makeup on my skin. However, in other places, I think it's doing a really nice job of blurring texture. I don't think it's really blurring my pores at all. I still kind of see them as little pincushion holes in my cheeks, and I don't think I could get this up to full coverage. I would say with the 2 coats we are at a medium coverage, but I still see little bits of sunspots poking through, a little redness poking through on my chin, and it looks kind of dry. Around my nostrils it is sort of caking up around there. There's not really excess product, but it's just sitting on top of the skin, and overall I feel like it just looks a little bit dry. I'm getting a little bit of accentuation of my crow's feet, which only happens in, states of really dry, dehydrated situations. And yeah, it's kind of, I don't know, it still feels comfortable and lightweight. It's still a little bit tacky. We'll see if I have to set this. I ended up preferring the sponge to blend out that second layer because the brush was leaving brush strokes in the foundation. So let's put the rest of my face on. Time check, it is 10:51. I'm going to go do the rest of my makeup and I will be right back. Okay guys, I did end up setting this very lightly with, where is it? The Becca Soft Light Blurring Powder. I basically set my cheeks and my forehead wherever I was going to blend out powder on top of this. When I applied this powder, it seemed to stick wherever the foundation was. So I'm thinking it was a good idea to set it, because had that been bronzer, we might have been in a bit of a pickle, but that I had trouble blending the powder out. Now, once that was down, everything else blended just fine. The problem I'm having is that this is really dry looking. It's accentuating every little crisscross line everywhere on my forehead, everywhere under my eyes. And it feels dry. It's accentuating my crow's feet, and I got that that almost, it's not tight yet, but that sort of itchy dry feeling going on, and that's usually not a good sign for whether something is drying on me or not. I feel like it looks dry, I feel like it feels dry, and it's accentuating my lines. It's also settling into my smile lines. I gave up tapping it out, and it's settling into my chin lines. It's only a little bit settled into my forehead lines, and it won't tap out, so it's just kind of there. I don't have too much of a problem with that. That's pretty normal as long as it's not a ton of product gunking up in there, but it is settling into my smile lines, and that is bothering the heck out of me. But that's where we're starting out. I'm not in love. It looks really heavy on my nose, and not in love with it right now, but on the rest of my face. My blush is the Laura Geller in Pink Grapefruit. Bronzer is the Balm Desert. My highlight, I've been crushing on this so hardcore, you guys. This is the Air from the Zodiac from Wet n Wild. And then I had forgotten that I had the Natasha Denona Super Glow, so I put that on top. I love how this highlight looks. Love. It's that like wet kind of highlight. This is beautiful too. This made a nice topper. We'll see how it looks on its own. But digging my highlight today. And my eyes are the Natasha Denona Lila palette. There is a shade in here that my brain cannot even process the undertone or the shift. Dragon Bite. Look at that. You know, it doesn't look like anything fancy in the pan, but holy cow. It's almost like this gold, green, red shift. It's cray. Cray, cray. Very cray. I love it. Love it. Love it. Eyeliner is a hot friggin' mess today. That's about it. Mascara is Urban Decay Perversion, and my lip is, I started out with something mauve and I didn't like it, so then I wiped that off, and I've now got the Marc Jacobs lip gloss in Enamored. That's where we're starting out. I'll be back in a few hours with a daylight check-in, and I will come back at the end of the night with my final thoughts. Hey guys, it is 6:42 p.m. so we're just about the 8-hour mark. I keep forgetting to bring my camera to work, so then I have to wait till I get home to film these check-ins. I'm not used to being back at work. So here we are, and at the 8-hour mark, we are just starting to see the very first elements of breakdown. I'm having a bit of separation on my chin, and my nose is getting just a bit of separation right on top. Blush, bronzer, highlight still fully intact. I don't like how it looks on my forehead. I'm going to try to show you guys. What I think is happening is all of the sort of micro wrinkles that I've got are very accentuated, and I'm even getting settling into just the tiniest little lines that aren't even lines yet. I don't know. Can you guys see this? I don't know how close I can get. I'm not a huge fan. Color match is fine for the amount of sun I've got. It's so hard to show you guys my arms. It might be a little light for my forearm comparison, but I think it matches my neck pretty well. But I don't know. I'm not liking this one, you guys. It's not super comfortable. It looks dry. I don't think it's exceptionally good at smoothing texture. It might smooth it a little bit, but like I can, now that it's getting dehydrated, I can kind of see all of my texture. It doesn't do anything for pores. I can still see all of my pores. You know, at a distance, when I saw it in bathroom lighting at work, I did not think it looked bad. It just looks like makeup, and I don't know. Look at how dehydrated my skin is. See all that? I'm just not a huge fan right now. There you have it. I will be back in a bit with my final thoughts. 9:58 p.m. That puts us just past the 11-hour mark. Let's get into how the NATASHA DENONA foundation held up. It broke up pretty significantly along my chin, completely separating at this point. Upper lip, very cakey, very separated. It's cracking and breaking up along my nostrils. The only place where this held up really nicely is my cheeks, where I set it with the Becca powder. Now, does that mean had I set my whole face more thoroughly that the whole thing would have held up better? That wouldn't fix some of the other problems we're about to talk about, but it is something to keep in mind as a possibility. My nose looks very heavy, very cakey. It has broken up on the texture in between my eyebrows, and I'm still not happy with how my forehead looks. I think it looks very old and leathery, and I don't think my skin actually looks like that. So I'm not a huge fan of how this looks at the 11-hour mark. Granted, that's a long wear time, but it was starting to break down around the 8-hour mark, so I don't think this has a ton of longevity to it. It's not the most comfortable foundation in the world. It feels really dry, and if your skin tends to get itchy when it's dry, that's what I've been feeling all day. I wanted to scratch my face, and I want to take this off. When I get to the end of the night and I just really want to wash my face, that's not a good sign, especially when it feels dehydrated like it does. I think the foundation looks pretty dry. It definitely settled into lines. It's totally caked into my cheek lines. It did settle into my smile lines. It settled and cemented into my forehead lines, so it didn't really move in my forehead, but then it settled into all the tiny little lines that aren't even lines yet. So if you have fine lines or deeper lines, wrinkles, I don't think this foundation is going to be your friend, especially for maturing skin, which often tends to be a little bit more dry. I also don't think it's a super matte foundation. I think at this point in the evening, I do have a little bit of shine to my forehead. Now, of course, I have highlight, and do you see? It's still visible. This is where I set my face with that Becca powder. That's the only place that seems to have held up. So, there's another issue with applying this foundation. I thought it looked much more natural and less heavy before I tried to build it up. Now, at that point, it really just looked like light coverage. It did not look like a light or medium to full coverage as it claims. This, I would say we got it to about medium coverage, but it looks heavy as heck on my nose. So maybe if it was applied lighter and I did not try to get to the medium coverage that they claimed, it wouldn't look so heavy. I don't know. There's some variables here that I think there's some possible room to work with in terms of making it work. But I had moisturizer on underneath this, and then I used a hydrating primer, and it still feels super, super dry. So I don't feel comfortable recommending this for dry skin. I don't recommend it if you've got fine lines and wrinkles and foundation settling into them bothers you. I don't think it lives up to its claims of smoothing, pores, and texture. You know, parts of the day I thought my texture looked slightly smoothed, but as the day wore on, I feel like, do you see how you can see all of the texture of my cheek here? Like, this is the worst side of my face, granted, but if it's going to smooth texture, it should smooth that out, and I don't feel like it's smoothing, at least not on me. If I had to give a grade to the NATASHA DENONA Transformatte, even though they claim dry skin can wear it, I don't think so, guys. I'm going to go D-. That's probably generous. Basically because most of the day when I saw myself in the mirror at, the 3-hour mark, the 5-hour mark, I thought at a distance it looked okay. It looked like I was wearing makeup, did not look terrible. Up close, I have not liked it really ever. I think it may be workable. There may be things that you can get this to work better, especially if you're not worried about dry skin. But on dry and maturing skin, at least with my experience at this point, I have to go D-. It's not a complete failure. It's not one that I want to reach for again. I will reach for it again. I always try foundations, especially if they grade C or lower, at least 2 more times to see if there's anything I can do to make them work. If anything changes, you'll hear about it in a future foundation follow-up video. If I don't mention it again, you can assume that my future trials, nothing changed. So I really wanted to love this because I am so crushing on NATASHA DENONA other products. This one's just not doing it for me, guys. Not gonna cut the mustard. There you have it, D- for the ND. Sorry, NATASHA. I've been loving your videos lately, but this one's just not gonna do it. Not on my skin. Be sure to check my website, geekoutofwater.com. Click the Foundation Fest link. I have all of my foundation reviews up there. I will have this one up there shortly. I wait until after the review has posted on YouTube before I update it on the spreadsheet just to avoid spoilers, but it will be up there soon. And be sure to use the search box at the top right. You can put in anything you want: hydrating, smoothing, blurring, SPF, vegan, whatever you want. It'll all pop up. They're all ranked. You can swipe that thing for all kinds of more information. And as always, thanks a lot for taking some time out of your day to geek out over makeup with me. If you want more foundation reviews or you enjoyed this one, give me a thumbs up down below. Please subscribe if you haven't already. I post new videos every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Comment if you have suggestions of foundations you would like to see. And I hope you guys all have an awesome day or night wherever you are in the world. Take care of each other. Bye-bye.